If you dance this waltz, I'll have my son marry you." Julian Vance Sr. sneered loudly enough for all of high society to hear, pointing his champagne flute at the black woman who had just tripped and dropped a silver tray on the polished gallery floor. The clatter of metal and glass silenced the 200 guests at the grand opening of Vance Tower. All eyes turned to Amara Jones, 35, who had been working as a contract server at the event for only a few weeks. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Drop it in the comments below, and if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. "Dad, you're being cruel," whispered Leo Vance, 28, his face flushed with embarrassment at his millionaire father's public spectacle. But Julian completely ignored his son's protest, clearly intoxicated by the power and expensive scotch he'd been drinking all evening. No, let me speak," Julian boomed, striding to the center of the room as if he were a king holding court. This person obviously lacks the basic grace required for her job. So let's see if she has any grace at all. Can she even move with the music? Amara remained kneeling, gathering the scattered utensils with trembling hands, but her eyes held a look that no one there could comprehend. It wasn't shame or fear. It was a profound calm, as if she were analyzing every condescending word, every cruel chuckle, every disdainful glance she received. Mr. Vance, the event coordinator, intervened quietly. "Perhaps it's best if we just best for nothing." Julian cut him off with a dramatic wave of his hand. "Play a waltz. If she can dance better than my wife, my son will marry her. Imagine it. The heir to the Vance fortune marrying the help." A wave of cruel laughter rippled through the hall. Some women hid their mouths behind their hands, feigning shock while clearly relishing the drama. The men shook their heads, treating it as a distasteful but acceptable form of entertainment. Amara finally rose to her feet, wiping her hands on her apron and looking directly at Julian Vance. For a moment, that stretched into an eternity. She stood in silence, as if weighing a decision that would alter not just her night, but the entire power dynamic of that room. "I accept," she said, her voice clear and sharp, slicing through the murmuring crowd. The hall fell completely silent. Even the string quartet paused, utterly confused by this unexpected turn. Julian blinked, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" he asked, his arrogance faltering for just a second. "I said, I accept your challenge," Amara repeated, a subtle smile now playing on her lips that sent an odd chill through some of the onlookers. "But when I dance better than your wife, you will honor your promise, even if you meant it as a joke." At that moment, as the guests began to laugh even harder, believing they were about to witness a historic humiliation, no one saw the familiar fire in Amara's eyes. It was the same fire that had once captivated audiences on the world's most revered stages before a single tragic night had violently altered the course of her life. If this story of prejudice and redemption is sparking your interest, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what is about to unfold in this ballroom will prove that underestimating someone can be the costliest mistake of a person's life. Julian's wife, Eleanor Vance, a 50-year-old woman known for her expensive ballroom dancing hobby, glided forward with a venomous smile. "Darling, do you really expect me to lower myself to compete with this?" she purred, gesturing dismissively at Amara. "Don't be so modest, Eleanor," Julian replied, thoroughly enjoying the scene. "You won the trophy at the country club last year. That should be more than enough to handle this." Amara watched them in silence, but her mind was transported 15 years into the past, back when she was known as Amara Dubois, the principal dancer for the American National Ballet. She remembered the roar of the crowd rising to their feet in thunderous applause, the critics who compared her to the greatest dancers in history, the feeling of soaring across the stage. It all came to an end on one tragic night. A special performance for international diplomats, a devastating car crash on the way home, 3 months in a coma, and a harsh awakening to a new reality. Her legs would never be the same. The doctor said she would be fortunate to walk without a limp. A professional dance career? Impossible. "Leo," Julian commanded, turning to his son, "get your phone out. I want to record this moment for posterity. The day a server tried to pass herself off as a dancer." Leo hesitated, his discomfort obvious. "Dad, this is too much. She was just doing her job." "The girl," Julian interrupted with a sarcastic drawl, "accepted the bet. Now she will provide us with some entertainment. Or would you prefer I tell your fiancé about that little incident in Vegas last month?" Leo's face went white. Amara understood at once that blackmail was part of the dynamic. It was yet another display of the toxic power Julian wielded over everyone in his life. "Music!" Julian ordered the musicians. "And let's get some wagers going. $500 for anyone who bets on my wife. 1,000 for anyone brave enough to bet on the server." Cruel laughter erupted again as some guests actually began to place bets. Eleanor positioned herself in the center of the floor, performing a few theatrical stretches. "You know," Julian said, sidling up to Amara with a wicked grin, "when you lose, and you will lose, I want you to get on your knees and apologize for wasting our time. And then, of course, you're fired." It was at that precise moment that something shifted in Amara's eyes. The same fierce determination that had propelled her to the top of the ballet world. The same fire that had pushed her through months of agonizing physical therapy just to walk again. The same dignity that had kept her going when she lost everything she had ever worked for. "Mr. Vance," she said, with a composure that unnerved some of the guests, "when I win, and I will win, I want you to honor the marriage proposal, but I also want something more." Julian raised an eyebrow, amused by her nerve. Oh, she has demands now. "Very well, entertain me. What else could you possibly want?" "I want you to admit, in front of all your guests, that you judged a woman unfairly based on the color of her skin and the uniform she wears. And I want you to issue a public apology." The room grew tense. Guests whispered amongst themselves, realizing this was no longer just a mean-spirited joke. Julian let out a loud laugh. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. Fine, I accept. But when you humiliate yourself, you will leave here without your job and without a shred of your dignity." What Julian Vance Sr. didn't know was that he was about to confront not just a server with a hidden past, but a woman who had already lost everything once and knew exactly how to fight for every ounce of respect in a world that had cast her aside. While Eleanor warmed up with some simple ballroom steps, a silent storm was gathering across the dance floor. Because there is a profound difference between someone who learned to dance as a socialite's hobby and someone who was born to make dance a universal language, even after fate tried to silence her forever. While Eleanor practiced her basic box steps, Amara stood motionless in the corner. Her mind, however, was a whirlwind of precise calculations. 15 years of grueling physical therapy, of learning to walk again, of accepting a life she never imagined, had forged a resilience within her that none of the wealthy guests could ever comprehend. "Look at her," one woman whispered to another. "She's probably never even been to a real dance before. What a needlessly cruel spectacle." Julian Vance circled the room like a proud showman, collecting bets from his guests and deliberately amplifying the humiliation. 500 says she can't even finish the song without falling, he announced, raising his glass. 1,000 for anyone who thinks she'll flee the floor in tears. The laughter echoed, but Amara noticed something Julian didn't. His son, Leo, wasn't laughing. The young man looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting his weight by the wall and avoiding eye contact with everyone. It was then that Amara recognized him. It wasn't the first time she had seen him. In her few weeks working events for Vance Corp, she had noticed a young executive who always treated the contract staff with kindness, a stark contrast to the others. It was him. "Miss," a low voice said beside her. Amara turned to see a black man in his 60s wearing the building's security uniform. "I'm Samuel, head of security. I've been here for 20 years. He approached her discreetly, pretending to check his radio. "I've seen you dance before," he murmured, his voice so low only she could hear. 15 years ago, at the National Theater. Amara Dubois, the principal soloist. I was on the security detail there too." Amara's heart pounded in her chest. Someone knew. After all these years of hiding her identity, working anonymous jobs just to get by, someone finally remembered who she was. "I thought you died in that crash," Samuel continued, his eyes showing a mix of awe and shock. "The papers said you'd never dance again." "The papers said many things," Amara replied, her voice steady. "Not all of them were true." Samuel nodded slowly. "What they did to you was wrong. And what they're doing now," he glanced toward Julian, who was still laughing loudly, "is even worse." In that instant, Amara made a decision she had been postponing for 15 years. It wasn't just about the dance. It was about reclaiming who she was. "Samuel," she said, "I need you to do something for me. After I dance, no matter what happens, I need you to record everything that follows, especially their reactions." He looked at her, confused, but nodded. Of course, but why? Because Amara smiled for the first time that night. Some people need a permanent reminder that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. Meanwhile, Julian decided to escalate the cruelty. "You know what?" he bellowed into the room. "Let's make it more interesting. If she can finish the waltz without falling, I'll give her $1,000. But when she fails, and she will fail, she will clean this entire ballroom floor on her hands and knees in front of us all." The crowd reacted with a mix of laughter and a few uneasy murmurs. Some were beginning to feel that a line had been crossed, but nobody dared to challenge Julian Vance, Senior Dad. Leo tried again. "This has gone too far." "Shut up, Leo," Julian snapped. "You're too soft. This is how the real world works. There are hierarchies, and people like her," he gestured toward Amara, "need to learn their place." It was then that Amara began to move, not to take her position on the dance floor, but to stretch. The movements were subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but Samuel recognized them instantly. They were the same preparatory exercises she used to do before every single performance at the National Theater. "My God," Samuel muttered to himself, "she's really going to do it." Eleanor, sensing the attention shifting, decided to begin her performance. "Start the music," she commanded. "Let's get this farce over with." The musicians, looking uncomfortable, began a classic waltz. Eleanor danced alone, executing competent but predictable ballroom moves. Her technique was clearly that of a wealthy amateur, polished but lacking soul. She received polite applause, mainly because she was who she was. "Well done, my dear," Julian said, clapping exaggeratedly. "And now for our featured performer." Amara walked slowly to the center of the floor. Each step was measured, filled with a dignity that started to make the crowd uneasy. This was not the walk of a defeated woman. "What song would you like?" the lead violinist asked, more out of courtesy than real interest. "The same one," Amara replied simply. "But from the beginning." Julian laughed. "Oh, she wants another go. How quaint." "Fine, play the song. Let's see how long she lasts." What none of them knew was that Amara had chosen that piece for a reason. It was a waltz she had performed hundreds of times. It was a piece she knew in her bones, one that flowed through her muscle memory. More importantly, it was the music from one of her last performances before the accident. A night she received a 5-minute standing ovation for a performance critics called Transcendent. As she waited, Amara closed her eyes, letting the memory of that night 15 years ago wash over her. She remembered the feeling of flight, the connection to every note, the absolute knowledge that she was born for this. The doctors said she would never dance again. The media said her career was over. For years, she had believed them. But she had never truly stopped dancing in secret alone as a way to heal not just her body, but her spirit. The music began, and with it, something miraculous was about to happen. The first notes of the waltz filled the silent hall, and Amara began to move. These were not the clumsy, hesitant steps everyone anticipated. Instead, she rose with a grace that seemed to alter the very atmosphere in the room, as if gravity itself had lessened its hold on her. Her initial movements were subtle, almost restrained, letting the audience cling to their low expectations. But as the music swelled, something extraordinary unfolded. Each step became more fluid, each turn more precise, each gesture infused with a profound emotion that began to captivate every person present. Julian Vance stopped laughing. Eleanor's smug smile vanished. The entire room began to understand they were not watching a server attempting to dance. They were witnessing a true artist reclaiming her stage. "My heavens," someone in the crowd whispered. She's magnificent." Amara executed a series of pirouettes that would be a challenge for any professional dancer, followed by a grand jeté that seemed to suspend her in the air with an impossible lightness. These were not ballroom steps. This was classical ballet of the highest caliber, masterfully woven into the fabric of the waltz. Samuel, true to his word, had his phone discreetly raised, recording not just Amara's breathtaking performance, but the expressions of the audience, especially the face of Julian Vance, which had morphed from scorn to confusion and then to a state bordering on terror. "This is impossible," Julian whispered to himself, his voice cracking. "Who in the world is this woman?" It was when Amara performed the final sequence from her legendary National Theater performance, a signature combination of movements she had choreographed herself, that the truth began to dawn on some of the guests. "Wait a moment," said a woman in the crowd, a well-known patron of the arts. "I know those movements. I've seen that sequence before, but where?" Leo Vance was completely entranced, his phone capturing every second. Unlike his father, he recognized brilliance when he saw it, no matter the source. As the music reached its crescendo, Amara performed a series of fouettes, continuous rapid turns on one leg that left the audience utterly breathless. The music ended, and Amara struck a final pose, one of both power and vulnerability, her arms outstretched, her head held high. A profound silence hung in the air, the kind that follows a moment that has surpassed all possible expectations. Then, slowly, one person began to clap, then another. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted into a standing ovation, the applause so thunderous it seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Extraordinary!" Another yelled. Julian Vance was as pale as a ghost, the full weight of his public humiliation crashing down on him. He had been utterly defeated by the very person he had sought to destroy. At that moment, Samuel stepped forward, his phone still recording. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced in a clear, strong voice, "allow me to introduce you to Amara Dubois, former principal soloist of the American National Ballet." The name exploded in the hall like a shockwave. People gasped. Amara Dubois was a legend, a brilliant star who had mysteriously vanished from the world stage after a tragic accident. "Impossible," Eleanor stammered. "Amara Dubois is dead." Or at least, she never danced again. "Clearly," Amara said, finally breaking her silence, "the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated." The crowd chuckled, but Julian Vance was not amused. He had just publicly degraded one of the most celebrated artists in the country, and it was all on video. "Mr. Vance," Samuel said, holding up the phone, "you stated that if she danced better than your wife, you would marry her to your son. I believe this audience can confirm that the condition has been met." Leo, realizing the magnitude of the situation, approached Amara. "Miss Dubois," he said, his voice filled with genuine remorse, "I want to publicly apologize for my father's behavior. It was inexcusable." "Leo, shut up!" Julian roared, his composure finally shattering. "You will not apologize to her." It was then that Amara revealed the final piece of her plan. "Mr. Vance," she said calmly, "we have a marriage to discuss." "Surely a man of your stature keeps his word? You must be insane if you think I'm honoring a drunken joke," Julian snarled. "Ah, but it wasn't just a joke," Amara replied with a smile. "Samuel, could you play the recording of Mr. Vance's wager?" Samuel played the crystal clear audio of Julian making the bet, setting the terms, and confirming he would keep his word. "That's blackmail!" Julian screamed, completely losing control. "No," Amara corrected him calmly. "This is accountability. You made a public wager. Now you must decide if your word is worth less than your prejudice." Leo stepped closer to Amara. "Miss Dubois," he said, "if you'll have me, I would be honored to uphold my father's promise, not out of obligation, but because any man would be lucky to marry a woman of your talent and character. Leo, if you do this, you are out of the company, out of this family," Julian threatened. "Then so be it," Leo replied, extending his hand to Amara. "Some things, Dad, are more important than money, like integrity." Amara looked at his outstretched hand, then at the stunned audience, and finally at Julian Vance. 15 years ago, People like you decided I was worthless because I was no longer perfect, she said. Tonight, you tried to humiliate me for the color of my skin and my job. But true nobility doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from how you treat people. She turned to Leo. Your son has learned that lesson in spite of you? As for the proposal, she smiled. I will accept a dinner with him. But marriage is built on respect, not on humiliating bets. The audience applauded again, this time for her wisdom. Julian Vance, defeated and disgraced, stormed out of the hall. The video went viral. Within 24 hours, Julian Vance lost billions in stock value and was forced to resign from his own company. He lost everything. 6 months later, the Amara Dubois Center for the Arts opened, funded by global donations and a lead gift from Leo Vance, who now ran a reformed, socially responsible version of the family company. Amara's real victory wasn't in destroying Julian Vance. It was in building something beautiful from the ashes of his cruelty. She proved that when we answer hatred with excellence, we don't just win, we change the world.